what do you get when you mix deep purpose, daily leadership, and the guts to say, I'm not okay on a podcast? No, it's not a therapy session, but it might feel like one, just without the bill at the end. Today's episode dives into what happens when two powerhouse chiropractors stop playing small, lean into vulnerability, and start shaping business culture that actually feels good to work in. This one's got honesty, boundaries, burnout, and bold leadership. And let's be real, probably a few moments where you say, yep, I've been there. This is raw, guys. It's real. This is Heartwork. Cue the music. Welcome back to Beyond Adjustments, where we dive deeper than just spinal health and get into the soul of running a meaningful practice, growing a team, and staying human through all of it. I'm your host, Amin Saeed, and today I'm joined by two doctors, business owners, and co-hosts of the Heartwork Podcast, who are redefining what it means to lead with authenticity. Dr. Marisa Baumann and Dr. Sara Nelson don't just run successful chiropractic practices. They're leading conversations around personal growth, emotional honesty, and what it really takes to stay lit up in the work we do. They've built teams, they've led people, they've cried on the floor, and they're here today to talk about all of it. So, if you've ever thought this work is too important to burn out in, or how do I lead others when I'm still figuring out myself? This one's for you. Dr. Marisa, Dr. Sara, welcome to Beyond Adjustments.
Thank you so much. We're so thrilled to be here.
So happy to have you guys. And Dr. Marisa, this is your second appearance on the show.
Absolutely. Happy to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back. Dr. Sara, I'd love to have you back. Okay, so you need to blow us out of the water today. All right, I'll grade you at the end, and I'll send it to you privately, and then we'll talk about future appearances.
I won't do my best
after this show. I'm just teasing. All right, so before we get into it, get into the real juicy stuff. Let's start with the story. So I want to know, how did this beautiful collaboration between the two of you start? Like from chiropractic to Heartwork, who or what brought this podcast to life?
Yeah, I'll start because it really was my journey in school and connecting with an organization that had an ability to bring together people that were already in practice with students that were looking to start their own practice after graduation. And so I remember going to my first conference and seeing this woman speaking on stage, hearing this reputation that preceded her, Dr. Sara. You have to meet Dr. Sara. She's this powerhouse female in the community. And so when I did, I just was so enamored by her, the eloquence in the way that she spoke, and the very, very clear person that shined through in the way that she presented herself. And so I just kind of kept my eye out there. I remember the first time I was introduced to her, actually, I was trying to do some vetting. And so I think back then it was really mostly Facebook versus like Instagram. And I was tracking her, and Sara has a horse, Winnie. And so I was like, okay, she likes horses. She was from Wisconsin. Like, what is something I'll ask her about this? So I remember like having my little like Rolodex of topics to talk about with her when I first met her. Because I had some colleagues that were in school that were planning to precept with her. So this is something that you can do as a student. You can go and work for a period of time in a established practice's office and like continue to actually really grow in a very clinical setting, versus just being in school. So when I met her, I felt very drawn, and I was like, I really want to explore the opportunity to precept with her. And through some shadowing opportunities and some exploration, it really ended up being Dr. Sara's office, Freedom Chiropractic in Knoxville, was where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be. And so I did go in shadow, and I remember having coffee with her at a local, like, fun gluten-free bakery. And she asked me some questions that really were like, whoa, hold on. One, why are you asking me these deep questions? What do you want to know? But two, like, wow, you actually really posed opportunities for me to self-reflect in the answering of those questions. And I really appreciated that, because I felt that if I was going to be around someone who cared so much about, like, my heart and the way that
Mhm.
I was showing up and the human that was showing up to this opportunity that was presented in front of me, not just what I could do or provide for their practice, that made it even sink more into my heart that I wanted to be there. And so
Mm.
during my time there for about 5-ish months, maybe, I really got to understand Sara as a leader and understand the way that she showed up for her team and the way that she encouraged and led her team to show up for each other. And so I really got to observe a team culture that I had never really seen in a
Mm.
workplace before. And actually, post graduation, I went to another office to really learn a lot of back office procedures. I spent a lot of time at Dr. Sara's learning patient facing tasks. And so before opening my own practice, I wanted to spend a little bit more time getting comfortable with the uncomfortable stuff that nobody teaches you in chiropractic school, which is the hows behind the tasks of running the business. And there was a very different team culture there. And so I really grew to appreciate even more what I had seen and continue to learn how I would have approached these situations that I'm now faced with if this was
Sure.
my own practice. So when I went back to New Jersey to open my first, Sara was a huge mentor, inspiration of mine, and I would just send text messages, frequent calls of like, am I driving myself crazy thinking about this topic or thinking about how to present this? And so we eventually moved to the app Marco Polo. So I'm not sure, I mean, if you've ever heard of this app before, but it's like basically you can send video messages to each other, but watch them at any time. So it kind of feels like you're FaceTiming with someone, but it's not where you both have to be on congruently. And so it allowed us an opportunity to just start sharing. And obviously, it started with a lot of business and development and systems and procedures, but it also continued to span personal topics. And we got to know each other on just a deeper scale. And during the time where I was evaluating if I really wanted to stay in New Jersey or sell my practice and move, she started to formulate questions as like, maybe this is a really big thing in your life that you should spend some intentional time like working through, really considering.
Yeah.
And so she had connected me with a heart-centered coach, and she also has worked with him. And so I got to start doing more of the inner work. And a lot of our conversations continued to expand on just our personal journeys with doing deeper work and becoming more heart-centered humans and understanding the difference between leading with heart and leading with ego, leading with performance. We are both very performance-driven individuals,
Mm.
which can be great. And it's a beautiful gift that we both have. However, that can very quickly turn unhealthy if the way that you're showing up in that performance is to
Sure.
gain something from it versus showing up more authentically in it. And so we really just had an opportunity to continue to support each other's journeys and grow along the way. And over the past several years, that is the most consistent thing that we have found with other leaders and entrepreneurs, not only in our business, but in other service-based businesses, is team culture,
Mm.
workplace culture, and oftentimes leadership leaks. Actually, all the time, sorry, leadership leaks. So if you have a person who is leading this ship and leading this business and they are showing up with an unhealthy heart, that continues to bleed into the culture of that workplace. And obviously, that continues to bleed into the service experience that those patrons are going to have. And so we decided to just put our two beautiful hearts together and start this podcast as a free resource and a way for us to share the things that we've grown through, share the journeys and the stories that we've had and the learnings that we have gained from that, and also continue to inspire people to ask themselves those same very deep questions to continue to evaluate the way that they show up, not only in their business, but in their personal life, in their home, in their relationships with themselves. And so it's just been this awesome opportunity and journey, and we're excited to see where it continues to unfold and go.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Um, you're, you're both successful business owners. And I love the journey that you decided to share together. You kind of answered my follow-up question of kind of the why, like what made you decide to share this so-called, we'll call it behind the scenes, right, of leadership,
Yeah.
the emotions, the growth. So I appreciate that. But how has this podcast, and again, it's called the Heartwork, right,
Yep.
podcast. How has it impacted your practices and in your personal lives? I mean, I imagine your patients see you a bit differently now, maybe. Has that been a gift, a challenge?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Yeah, you just had shared that story.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
I think for both of us, the start of this podcast was something that was very organic and very we wanted it to be something that was just going to be this like easy next thing that wasn't necessarily having to be work. And so I think the coolest part is I did it also, and I know we both did, for the space of like, if this is going to enrich me, why would it potentially not enrich somebody else? And so as we're putting that out there without any expectation of potentially what this is going to look like and who's going to listen to it,
Mhm.
who knows, and we'll just trust that if that's meant to go somewhere, that somebody may grab it, they may be touched by it, they may be also inspired by that. And so I think the amount of responses, not only just within our chiropractic world, because I think a lot of people know us from that just in general. But I was just telling her yesterday, I had a patient come up to me and she's like, I've been watching all the stuff that you've been doing and like hearing and
Love it.
and she was just like, so what are you doing? So she just asked me some of that, like little bit of that question. And
Yeah.
I kind of just went into the story, not only just on Heartwork and what my heart just really beats for. And she's like, it has really just inspired me. And I don't know what y'all are doing, but anything that you're doing, I want to be a part of it. And so it's just been neat. That part's been cool. People have been really celebratory and excited to almost hear more too, outside of just patient care, because I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up, like, I have pain, I want to see change, I want to see my health move. But then once you have those things, life still goes, right?
Sure.
Like life still evolves. And
So
we
good.
see a lot of, obviously, families, parents, but we see a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders at the same time too. So it's been a beautiful gift to see that come through as
I
well.
love that. I love that. I think the last episode I watched was the one with your dad, Dr. Marisa.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a good episode. Go and watch that one. I don't remember the episode number. You know what?
It's a
Never
good-
mind. Watch all of them. Okay. Um,
Watch all of them.
That was so good. That was so good. I love how you're using your voice to really normalize the stuff, all the stuff, right? No one sees on highlight reels, because leadership is not just about casting vision. Sometimes it's about surviving your fourth meeting of the day. And you're still like remembering, to write the email. You guys are just done. It's real stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, I love that you're doing it the way you're doing it, because it's real. And I could tell also, like, from the episodes that I have watched, you're not holding anything back. It's not what I call, it's not a social media approach. And what I mean by that is, you're not posting all the good stuff. You know how families are constantly posting their vacations and they just got their hair did, and all that stuff. It's not that. It's not that. It's real. And I love that. I love that. All
Well, I
right.
think
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
speak to that, people are really craving authentic connection. They're craving relatability in a world that is continuing to evolve and grow, even just technologically. Like, we really do want to understand and see the human behind the business and the heart behind the human. And so when you have an opportunity to share, like, this is the stuff people want, because they're like, am I alone in feeling this way? Or am I alone in like going through this in a business? Unless you're investing again in other coaching, a lot of times you're still investing in coaches that are going to teach you systems and procedures and the what's and the hows, but they're not going to investigate and understand the why, because you cannot outsystem an unhealthy heart.
Right.
And I hear that just day in and day out. And even to continue to elaborate on your last question, I have had practice members that will, obviously it's always really fun when they ask me about clinical health questions that are even just outside of my typical scope. Like that just makes me feel that they value my opinion and they want to come for me for information. But as this journey has gone on, I've had people that will come to me and approach me like, this is what's been going on in my work, or this is what's been going on with my leader, or this is what's going on in my relationship. And you have shared a sentiment around that. Like, can we have some time to explore that? Yeah. And I think that's just amazing, because I love that the questions are being asked, right? Because oftentimes we're told to just shove it under the rug, figure it out. Like, no, you have a business to run, you have things to do, you have tasks in front of you, but it takes so much away from our human beingness to sit in all that human doing that you just ignore what's going on. And what you're actually doing is just tallying up this giant receipt of resentment.
Yep. I love that. And I get more out of the entrepreneurs that I kind of follow that are more upfront about what happened that day. Like, I'm not going to sit here and watch some dude, I just finished a 3-hour workout and, I went into the office and I got my business. No, I want the guy who's like, I missed my workout this morning. But I still went to work and I still did my best to rock it out. That kind of person. That when you're real, I think that's when people connect with you. And I see that in you guys. So I love that. All right, let's zoom in on that side of things. When it's less vision casting and more barely hanging on. Let's talk about the B word. No, not that word. And not branding either. The other one, burnout. You've both been open about seasons of exhaustion and frustration. What did burnout look like for you personally, and what helped you kind of name it and move through it? And I'd love to hear from the both of you on this one. Go ahead, Dr. Sara. Yeah, I'll let you answer that one.
So when I got these questions from you, the word burnout to me is an interesting word, because I don't know if I've ever actually experienced like full burnout, which I'm really grateful for. So, but let me be clear, there are definitely been seasons of transition and seasons of exhaustion and it's seasons of holy mother crap, what the freak is happening in my life, right? So like, but I think one of the things I've learned, because like what even got me into the place of doing Heartwork, is I was in a space of, I felt like my world looked so beautiful on the outside. I had everything. I had money in my bank. I had all the accolades that I could ask for. I had like a beautiful life and all these type of things. But at the same time, my inside of my system felt very like there was a lot of stuckness. There's a lot of loss. There was a lot of like feeling left behind for pieces of my life that I felt like I should be experiencing up to that point. And so for me, as I started to go on this journey, when things became hard, because again, life just is hard. There's not seasons of time where you're not going to just have things that are not easy. Like we're currently, honestly, in a season of a very lean season with team. I'm in a season of transition with a lot of things. And so it does require more of me and it requires different energy of me. And so there are just different rhythms where I've just had to navigate and understand like what I'm giving, am I okay with that? So as I like have acknowledged the messiness of life at the same time, there's a beautiful opportunity to be able to say like, okay, am I seeing this, but am I bringing my wounding into this? Like, am I bringing myself and am I making this more of a quote unquote burnout season than it necessarily has to? And a lot of the reasons I think, and I know for myself, but also for other people, why we experience burnout is because we're compromising pieces of ourselves that weren't meant to be given away from you in the first place. And you're giving of yourself in ways that are just, they're not meant to be given. And so in turn, when you give of those things, people may maybe like you more. They may see that you're doing more. They may you may have a name on your board that you are like, again, just this awesome freaking leader, or you're doing all these big things in this industry, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the internal person is a healthy human. So that's where resentment will come, and fatigue will come, tiredness will come. The word burnout will come because we are giving more than what we necessarily need to. So for me, that's just what I've learned is like when I start to notice myself in fatigue or tired or any of that, like it's a recalibration opportunity for me to really ask the question,
Sure.
Okay, what am I potentially giving that's not necessarily a beautiful thing there? And I've also been honest with I think that's the culture part of it for my team. There are 100% things that I will not share with my team, right? Like I'm not going to bring Mike into the office all the time, right? While I've also learned that vulnerability creates invitation, which then creates opportunity. If I want my team to be able to understand what it looks like to be vulnerable, why would I not share pieces of my story and pieces of my life? Because they're also going to experience fatigue, the tiredness, the resentment, the potential burnout factors that may come along with that. And so I've learned along the way then of creating an experience and not culture to be able to slowly invite them into that and help teach through those changes and teach through that allows us to be able to have a healthier culture altogether too. So when we're going through change and I may be experiencing tiredness, our whole team doesn't have to be in disarray, if that makes sense. So, so I feel like burnout is this like beautiful phrase and word, while also at the same time, I think it all at the end of the day comes back to how we're presenting ourselves and how we're aware of our humanness and the things that we need in our life to be able to make sure that we are able to function and really acknowledge who we truly are in that season and time as well.
Sure.
I mean, to tag off of that, Sarah, I completely agree. And I think that burnout is kind of one of these like catchy hot phrases that we send out now. And just in like, when you're feeling personally like exhausted or split in different directions, it's like, oh, I'm so burnt out because you're feeling less motivated or you're not really wanting to show up to all the things that you're supposed to. But oftentimes it's like, okay, you can just say that you experienced burnout and just name it something. But like, are you actively doing something to evaluate where that is coming from, why that's happening in the first place, and then what you can do to change it? Are you just going to wear the fact that you feel burned out but still show up every day as a badge of honor? Because I feel like oftentimes people will do that, right? They're like, I'm so busy. I have all these different buckets. I have all these different things I want to do. And it's like they're not willing to delegate. They're not willing to let some things off their plate. They're not willing to sit still and really evaluate what truly makes their heart and soul sing, and where that energy is also being poured back into the system versus just being poured out in the name of like trying to make it look like they have it all together or they can do it all for some kind of typically ego feeding wounding of themselves that hasn't actually truly been addressed and evaluated. So for me, I've worked through a lot of this because I have grown up wanting to people please, wanting to prove my worth, prove that I deserve a seat at the table. And so if I could get through divorced parents, if I could move to all these different new areas and schools, if I could handle the 3 sports with the plays and the concert piano and the singing and dance and watching my 2 younger sisters, if I could figure out the college and join 6 different clubs and study abroad and switch a major when I was a junior and still graduate in 5 years, like, and more, that just meant that like, I was super special and able to handle all these things and keep it together. But you get to a point where that mountain of receipts for me personally got really high. And it was just something that you don't necessarily realize because you just might be having a lens or a perspective on that doesn't give you the capacity to really take the step back and look internal, because everything that you've done up to that point is all for external validation. And if you don't build that muscle, you're not even sure what to freaking look for. And so that's why sometimes taking a moment to also say, I need to invest in myself. And I might also need to go somewhere and have these darker conversations or use someone to shine the light on the dark spots of your heart that you're not even aware of or know that actually have more of a grip on you than you understand. That's where I feel like when we have the feelings or the sensation of this burnout that we toss around so quickly and easily, that it's really about taking a moment to look internal at where that's really coming from. What are we actually afraid of happening if we don't do all of these things? What are we thinking that other people think of us if we don't present ourselves in this certain way? Because oftentimes, again, it is some kind of external picture, photo, montage appearance that we're trying to put out into the world that may not actually be in alignment with the person that's really begging to show up differently to those experiences.
I love that. There's another B word that I want to talk about. Boundaries. Because they get talked about a lot. But they're really hard to hold sometimes, especially when you're the owner. I mean, I live that. I get that. You know, when you're the mentor, when you're the boss, and essentially for you guys, you're really the heartbeat of your clinic. How have your boundaries evolved over time?
Want to leave that one, Sarah?
Sure.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, I mean, so I love that question because I think it is a very popular word. Burnout and boundaries are two very popular words that we like to throw around all the time.
And balance.
And balance, 100%. The three Bs, right? Yeah. Burnout, boundaries, and balance. Boundaries themselves have honestly been one of the healthiest things I've actually experienced, though, out of everything that we've been talking about, between, again, burnout, all those other ones. But they are very hard. Like you said, they're very hard to hold if you don't trust yourself and if you don't trust what you feel is actually coming out of you, because you have all the rest of those things where you constantly are giving of yourself, right? So for an example of mine, I grew up in a household where I had some health issues, which I'm not going to get into this time. So maybe on this next podcast that I'll come back to, we will talk about my health story when it comes to chiropractic that way.
Yeah.
However, because of that, and because of just the rhythm of some woundings I had in my lifetime, I was also a very performance-driven individual, very results-focused. And because of my health stuff, I immediately almost became like the mother of my family, the way that it worked. And so at least just my perceived need that I needed to hold. I needed to be a very strong human, did not have a lot of emotions given off just because of things just due to this health struggle. And so as I found myself in leadership, I found myself doing that exact same thing with my team. And I found myself doing that exact same thing with my friends, my relationships. I became the mother and the caretaker for them and cared more about them. And these were the things that, again, I was giving away of myself and abandoning pieces of myself to make sure that everybody else was taken care of, which then turned into, again, the quote unquote burnout that we were talking about, but more so resentment, fatigue, that way around it. Sure. And so then it became this opportunity that I got to actually realize and claim back pieces of my heart. And sometimes the boundary didn't necessarily mean that I had to be like, hey, so-and-so, I'm going to put a boundary up around this and we're never going to talk about this again. It became this boundary of like not necessarily giving when I necessarily felt like I always did. And so sometimes it didn't necessarily mean there was any external result. It was just an opportunity for me to say, hey, this isn't healthy. I'm aware of what I'm doing right now. And I'm just going to try to create opportunities where I'm not going to do the same response anymore. And I think one of the healthiest things I learned is that when you put a boundary in place and you let it do its work, it's going to do more than we ever will, because at that moment, then it's up to God and the results are up to God. Comparable to me trying to wrestle and like manage my way into the result of that. And so truly, as I've started to build healthy boundaries, especially around the way I used to lead my team, my team has thoroughly just flourished. I'm no longer their mother. I don't have to be this like, I used to always think I had to be incredibly kind and almost like, whatever you ask of me, I'm going to say yes. Like, whatever you want, I will give it to you because I want to make sure that you're taken care of, type of a thing. And now some of those people that originally started my practice with me are no longer there because of just the rhythm of life and just the season that they were meant to move into as well. While also now I've learned that, again, that was partly because of the boundaries I put in place, that they no longer were in alignment with where I was going and what I felt I was being called to. And so now I have people on my ship that are like, yeah, I'm here and I want to be a part of this, but I'm now more of a much more kind human and leader, along with a very strong leader and human at the same time. And those boundaries themselves have done the work for me without me having to try to manipulate, control, or mother my way into that result that I'm looking for from my team at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a common misconception that you cannot be a strong, kind of boundaryful leader and be kind at the same time. Like it's doable. One of the strongest leaders in my life. I was doing consulting for a while years ago. This man was the kindest man you will ever meet. But he also knew what he wanted and how he wanted to run his ship. And he had the most successful teams in consulting. He's extremely successful now. He's grown. But again, when you're having the conversation with him, he's kind, but he's also telling you, hey, here's your guardrails. Like this is where we need to be in. And then if you fall out, this is what's going to happen. I don't want that for you, but this is what's going to make this particular journey together successful.
Sure.
And it was amazing. Dr. Marisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could say it any better, but I do feel like you can be kind and strong, and you don't need to necessarily use the word boundary to set the boundary.
Right.
I think it's more about
That's good.
setting expectations, right? Because oftentimes when you hear like, I'm putting up this boundary with you, or no, I have a boundary around that topic, or I have a boundary around this, what that arbitrarily does is literally creates a wall now between you and that other human being.
Sure.
And you can be human to human and vulnerable with each other while still maintaining that air and essence because of the way that you show up into those conversations and into those opportunities. So, I mean, this transcends even into personal life. There's someone in my life where it gets very triggered by the word boundary because everyone's been having that conversation with them and the way they show up. And sometimes it's not about having the conversation about how they're showing up or like, no, I have this boundary with you because of the way that you respond to me, but just arbitrarily making an internal choice in what you're going to give energy to in that relationship versus what you're not. And so when it comes to team, that I think also creates an opportunity for you to hone in on leadership skills because it's the way that you converse and express expectations around a situation or a topic. For example, I just recently navigated a situation with my team where we are a very home-centered office and we create a lot of community in our office. And now that we've been in practice for several years, it has allowed for people to also be in our world with us through different seasons of their life in that time. And naturally, conversations are going to transcend from just business and health and their journey to personal topics of what's going on in each other's lives, right?
Absolutely.
And I want that for my practice. There's a reason why I've hired the people I hired, and they are people-centered people, because we want people to feel like this is a home that they can feel seen, listened to, heard, and loved. What that also creates opportunities for is for friendship to naturally start to thrive and become organic. And I want my team to continue to be adults like they are and make decisions around the way that they want to operate in their life, not only in my practice, but in their personal life. And so it's come with opportunities where, you know, practice members and team members may facilitate times to get together, meet for a coffee, moms connect, right? Like just life organically unfolds.
Yeah.
There is still an expectation around certain topics that are related to our business and the way our business runs and what we do in our business that doesn't transcend relationship outside of the office for reasons of HIPAA, for reasons of just protecting marketing, for reasons of protecting certain aspects of our practice that are important as we are a thriving business in the community. And so one day we just sat down and had a conversation around the continued honor and awareness for our practice, while also giving space for that very important aspect of our practice and practice experience to also continue to thrive organically in the way that we want to, as we continue to host events and casual meetings where people can create community with our practice and with each other. So again, like there's a way for you to be able to show up in that and create an expectation without feeling like you're forcing a boundary that seems so firm and so final, when really most of the time it's about creating boundaries with ourselves and then showing up differently into those opportunities.
Okay. So what's then, okay. So on the same topic, right?
Yep.
These kind of trigger or key or popular words of boundaries and we now threw balance in and burnout. What's something that you used to think was your job as a leader and that you now realize absolutely isn't?
Giving away the farm for everyone else. I mean, kind of like what Sara talked about. For me, I mean, I had to navigate the situation with a team member that was really, they were a rock star team member. They were great. There was just always another ask, always another ask, always another ask. And it was always, yes, 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 we can be flexible. Sure. Like, let's make this work so that it works for you. But eventually it got to the point where it wasn't working for the business anymore. And so what I've had to really learn and navigate is I still have to steer this ship. And that sometimes means that I'm going to have to let some people off the train that are looking for something different. And that's okay. And I can love them as they go and be grateful for the opportunity and the things that they've brought to our practice, while also making sure that my business is viable and runs in the way that it needs to, so that we can continue to serve the people and the heart and the community that we are. And so for me, it's been more a lot of learning to say yes and learning to say no, and that I'm still a heart-centered leader, even when I have to create an expectation so that our business can continue to be the business that it needs to be, which also not only protects our practice members, but also protects other team members that are showing up and wanting to really participate in the way and giving of themselves because they love it and they want to be there and they want to serve in that capacity.
How about you, Dr. Sara?
Well, so many things also. So I feel like as you build your business and as you scale yourself as a leader and you scale your business, what I did when I first started my practice, I don't do now at all. Just I'm systematically, and also just like as a leader, like I'm not the one answering the phones anymore. You know, like my team literally jokes with me now. Like if no joke, I answered the phone the other day and I had a team member come behind me and I was like, hey, can you talk to this person? Because I don't know how to do this. Like little things like that, where I'm like, when you like build your way out and you delegate certain things. So I think one of the 100%, the understanding of like when you can say yes and when you can say no to something, like Marisa said, and understanding like what is the best usage of your time as a leader that's going to be the most influential in the practice. For us to be able to get to where they were, honestly, as me as the CEO and as me as a leader, I had to remove myself even more, because that's what allowed for my team to trust themselves, for my team to trust me, that I was not just going to be over their freaking head and trying to micromanage every single little thing that they're doing and all that type of stuff. And so, and then allowed us to be able to then say like, okay, I trust you. I see that you're doing this and I see your potential. Now I'm going to lead you in that potential, so that even quote unquote, the systems they can always refine, they can always change. But now I see your potential as a human and as a leader. Now let's move this thing forward so you can lead more humans to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that part has evolved tremendously. Like on the day-to-day stuff, like what I'm doing in our practice, literally it's like, it's probably not zero, but it's a lot. It's a very small amount of things comparable to what I'm doing now as more of the CEO and somebody that's actually like being the visionary, somebody that's actually building in that quote unquote balance and boundaries within what I'm willing to put myself into work. I'm not willing personally, like I'm doing doctor care all the time. I'm like taking care of diagnosis and all that type of things, but I'm not the one that is like doing paperwork behind the scenes. My team is fully capable and fully empowered to do that at the same time. So
love that.
There's ways that you can enhance that, and they have to as you scale and you grow business.
Of course. Absolutely. I mean, I think all business owners are guilty of that at one point or another. And I think when you don't actually learn that lesson is when you fail. I've seen businesses around me, I won't name them because they're still in my life, that have failed because they were just running things the way they knew how to run them, period, end of story. And you couldn't teach them otherwise. For me, the way I look at it is, it's like and the percentages aren't exact, but I'm like 65% strategic / business and like 35% heart. I'm not going to be a butthole to you, but I am going to tell you, hey, this is how it's going to be. I just recently experienced something with an employee where she is the sweetest woman you'll ever meet. I mean, like, very soft voice. She'll do anything you ask. Like, she's amazing, but she just wasn't getting it. And you're putting these systems in place and the framework in place. Hey, this is how we have to do it. And it was time and time and time and time again. And unfortunately, that ended the way it did. But it's again, we have to think about the health of the business, because if the business is not in a healthy place, then you're not going to be able to hire these people to give them the ability to, have a living, to, get that paycheck and so on. So we have to be cognizant of that. So love your answers. So let me throw a challenge question out there for you guys. What's one hard truth, like really hard truth, you've had to learn about yourself through leadership?
Just one.
I wish you guys can hang out longer, but yeah, that's all we
Literally.
got time for. Yeah.
I mean, I think truly this is something that just constantly gets answered and evaluated. And that's the point as you continue to grow and evolve, right? There's so many things I can plug into. I guess the one that would be the most like relevant and applicable for me right now as I continue to move kind of out of startup and into a scaling phase now with another doctor in the practice and everything. As much as I love being on teams and being a team player, I noticed myself again feeling the need to prove my worth by doing it all myself, and knowing how to run every single system and how to run every single procedure, because if I didn't know it, how could I teach someone else to do it? And now what I'm really learning and understanding is, one, letting things off my plate so I can focus on the big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One that empowers my team to feel more valued, right? Because like they're being empowered with tasks and decisions that they've only seen me do. But it also gives me room to allow their skills, creativity, desires, passions to be brought to the table. And that just enhances literally everyone's experience, not just our practice, the practice members, theirs, etc. So one of the biggest things that I've had to actually let go of that I didn't know I was still holding on so much to is the fact that I want it to be a team and I want it to be a collaborative experience. And so I will ask my team frequently on ways that they're experiencing things in their day-to-day that I might not have access to because of my doctor tasks and roles compared to their care advocate roles, that we can improve, that we can enhance, that we can work on. Taking more of a step back and letting them lean in versus always leaning forward and always tasking and telling and doing, but really inviting them in to continue to help build this thing with me, knowing ultimately I have the authority to make a decision about whether or not we're going to take this path or yes or no, but really being able to have a space of growth with that, of reflection with that, and continued, like, again, honing in and saying aside, like, Marisa, take a moment and allow this to breathe, because that's really where life and heart gets to thrive through those situations. And even so now I'm excited that I have another doctor in the office and that I'm stepping into this next version of a leader as I continue to offload and offset and teach and inspire someone who also comes to the table with an incredible set of gifts that now we get to use that together towards a purpose, versus trying to specifically clone Marisa's to operate in this business that I think should be operated in a certain way, when there actually may be an incredibly beautiful way for it to happen because there are other incredible human beings that are along this journey with me.
How about you, Dr. Sara?
So I'm just going to answer it in the side of seasons. I think the coolest part about heart, like this heart journey, is that typically you're going to find yourself going through seasons and seasons and seasons and layers and layers and layers. And there's this analogy of, if you see like a well of water or just any type of like water, at the top layer, all that you can see is exactly that surface layer of water. You can't see anything underneath, and water is something that you can't just scoop out and see movement, right? So like if you take out the top layer of the water, what's next is the next layer of exploration, curiosity, vulnerability, whatever that may look like. And so to that, with that being said, like through seasons, I feel like one of the biggest things I've learned is that my cycles and who I am as a human dictate how, like, what bleeds into my practice, how I lead my people, how my team is going to like show up based on who I am and how I'm taking care of myself. If I'm bleeding over everything else is going to feel that. If my journey and my like heart truth is actually working through that I have and actually taking care of myself first, then in turn, typically I will see the fruit of that because I'm doing the work ahead of time. And I'm inviting my team to do the same thing. So, yeah, it's so hard to just put one. So at the end of the day, I think at the end, like for me, it always comes back to like, are you taking care of yourself? And because at the end, if you are doing that, you're going to see the fruit of it and see the enrichment as people will feel and experience that from you.
No, I get that. And I know it's hard to pick just one because honestly, we probably learn on a daily basis, right?
Really?
So yeah, so I don't know who needs to hear this, but just because you can hold all the plates doesn't mean you should. And yeah, go ahead.
To share on that, I literally
Please.
just was reflecting on this the other day of like, just because you're offloading your plate and delegating doesn't mean that you're bad at managing it all. It just means you're creating more space for you to actually do some of the bigger things that you're being called into, and that season that you're being called into to show up as a better leader and a more healthy human for your team.
Yeah, that's good. Let's keep moving and talk about how you've taken what you've learned and built teams that don't just survive, but actually thrive. And I'd really like to get through this section because I only have Dr. Sara here for just a few more minutes, and I want to be cognizant of her time. But you've both built teams, you've trained leaders, and you've probably been ghosted by at least one associate or something, right? I'm sure something like that's happened. Maybe not an associate, but when it comes to team culture, what are some non-negotiables? So, that you've developed over the years, things that you're like, nope, we can't cross this line, period.
So 100%, we have definitely had team no longer with us, and they're people that have been with us for 8+ years now at this point. I've been open for 10 years in my practice. And so
Congrats.
There's definitely going to be seasons. And I think at the end of the day, like as the person that's running the ship, you do have to have a understanding that not everybody's going to be with you forever, because as human beings, life happens for one, and that we can always evolve. I think especially in our industry, I see a lot of people hold on really tightly to whether or not a person's going to stay with them for a really long time. And then if they are not going to stay with them, they get scared and they hold on even more tightly, and so that they won't actually let it flow. And they think the whole world's going to fall apart if that person ends up leaving. And so it can be really devastating for the leader, but then it also creates a major energy crisis around change. And so I think one of the coolest things that we've built, and not only just like from the get-go, we talk about honor and awareness. We talk about the different like section versus respect and honor. There in our society, there's this need and this draw for authority, for power, for I'm going to do something so you get respect from me, versus honor is something that is literally, you can honor somebody just because they're breathing and they were created by literally the one that created us, right? And so when you extend honor, you create something and you tell that individual that they are extraordinary versus ordinary. And it's not something that it basically has to be earned to be able to extend that. And so from that, we basically then create a foundation for, I want my team to feel like they are incredibly valued, they are seen, that they are important. And also at the same time, we're extending that same thing to our people. So we've created systems, we create our leadership, everything around that, so that our team, our people then feel like they're joining a community community, they feel like they can belong, that they are a part of something bigger than themselves. Non-negotiables for us, like we do this with check-ins, all that type of stuff. We have certain core values and we have certain elements of what I expect from my team when it comes to how they show up. That's whether they're teachable, that's whether they're humble, it's how organized they are. And also then diving into like what specifically they're really good at and what they're hired for, right? So like some people are not as drawn to people. They're more of an organizational individual comparable to somebody that's more organizational, or they're not as organizational, they're more people. And so we've created frameworks and understanding to where this is our foundation. This is who we are. And if you're still in alignment with this, then you're going to be able to rise up in this with who your uniqueness is. And we're just going to come alongside and empower that. But it still needs, like, you still need to show up with this in mind when it comes to our foundation of honor, like awareness, our foundation of like team excellence, that type of thing, all these core values to really align with that. So that's allowed us to be able to then also keep temperature when something is not moving in that direction. Like I just had literally a team member, she had her 30-day review yesterday that a leader was doing. And she's like, okay, can I talk through some of these things? Because these are not in alignment with who we have basically said from the beginning, who we are. These are some of these things that are like leaking and slipping through this. So then we have a conversation, we invite them into awareness of some of the things they're doing, and an invitation to lead them through it, to say, hey, I see this in you and you're better than this. And also, how can I continue to encourage you? But also, this is our standard. If something doesn't change, then unfortunately, this job probably is not going to be for you. You know, and so then we have a time frame for that to be able to see movement and change actually happen.
I love that. And just to keep time here, I'm going to jump to the next question, and I'll ask you, Dr. Marisa, to jump in on this one. Let's talk about the shift from being the friend, right, to being the leader. Like, what were the hardest parts of that evolution for you?
I think the hardest part of letting go of trying to be your team members' friends to continue to grow into a leader, not just for me personally, but I've now had to coach other team members to do this. Like my longest standing team member has been with me since I first opened the practice. And so when you talk about creating like a friendship and a relationship, like we were there late at night screwing the holes into our benches and like putting chairs together and stuff, right? Like you're creating an opportunity where you're really literally building something together. And so it can be hard to kind of create that degree of understanding. And so especially then when you have someone who has started out in the same entry-level position as others, and now they're getting called into more of a leadership and having to hold space and hold standard and hold expectations for certain aspects of your business. It can be hard to have those quote unquote tougher conversations, or more of those exploratory conversations about why another team member may not be showing up as their best selves into that space. And so being able to, I think, just constantly curate your own communicative skills and be open to communicating in ways that you're not used to. Something that we can often do is just, especially if we're feeling attacked or hurt, or like a value has been violated, we can get very defensive in those moments. And so instead of getting defensive, you throw the hands up, because like we can. And even for myself, even though I have worked on this, there are still moments where something will not be done in the expectation that has been set. And I'll almost feel like personally attacked for it. And so I have to take a moment and invite myself to understand where those feelings are coming from. But also too, when approaching that conversation, having it be an open invitation to also have that person sitting in front of you share what they may be experiencing on the front end. One of the examples that I have that's pretty common is like, let's say someone continuously is showing up late. And we have an expectation of when we're supposed to be at the office, when we're supposed to be there, and starting to work with each other. And so instead of saying like, listen, you've been late 3 times this week, like you're going to have to figure it out, or like you're getting a written violation, and then, you're in breach of your contract and you're no longer an employee here. You don't know, again, what kind of storm might be going on in that person's life. That doesn't mean that you need to bend over backwards to allow someone else's storm to be brought into your practice, right? But you can open up a conversation where that person can come to the conclusion themselves of what's actually leading them to showing up late. How does that not only affect them, but really the other team members that they're working with, in the sense that they're feeling like they're having to put up more to take care of the slack that's now present,
Yeah.
and how that's affecting the rhythm of the practice, and saying, hey, I have noticed that it has been harder for you to arrive on time this last week. What's going on? I wanted to have a check-in with you because this isn't like you. This isn't in alignment with our core values, which you know and are fully aware of. So help me understand what's going on and how I can support you in this time. What do you need to be able to continuously show up in the way that you're being called to? You know, like they're invitations. They're coming at it not defensively and
Yeah.
attacking that person because you feel hurt of something that they did, but getting curious about what that person might be going through, experiencing, and also then utilizing that as an opportunity to lead. I had a situation with a team member who is a lead team member, and I found out kind of through like a random experience that they had just in the heat of the moment offshot something about me in that moment, in the way that I was showing up in the practice to the other team members. I found out about this and I felt hurt because I was like, wow, is this what they thought of me in this moment? Or if they didn't like the way that I expressed something or explained something, I wish they would have come to me and shared it versus just like went to the rest of the team to just like offload a moment of frustration.
Sure.
And so I had an opportunity in a one-on-one to express, hey, I actually noticed that this happened. And I wanted to come to you and understand where you were coming from in that situation and how you were feeling. And so I got to understand what was going on and then say, okay, let's reverse the tables. And let's say a team member had shared that with other team members about you and your leadership position. How would that have made you feel? Do you think that might have undermined your authority to be able to lead those team members? And what could be a way that we create a new approach in the future when we're feeling that way? And what really happened was that they were having a day, right? And so their own personal, receipts were adding up.
For sure.
There's life that just happens. Like, we're not going to show up perfectly authentic and honoring and doing all the things all the time, right? There's moments that allow us to take a step back, reflect, but then be raw with yourself and raw with each other. And yeah, that wasn't the best version of myself that showed up. This is, what I was going through, whether you're sharing that or not, but understanding that within yourself and then choosing to show up differently next time.
Yeah. Dr. Sara, how would you, or how do you kind of lovingly, we'll use that word, call people kind of up without falling into the trap of micromanaging or over really functioning? I am the number one offender of this. I hate being micromanaged because I know I can get the job done. But I think when it comes to my work specifically, because I'm so good at it, sorry for the pride moment there, it's hard for me. I have to deliberately just leave them. You ask them to do this, leave them. You know what I mean? Like, I have to consciously tell myself over and over, hey, like, leave it alone. But yeah, I'm going to ask you that question. How do you deal with that?
I think one of the, especially if you grow a team and you're in that space, like there is this part of like having to let go and trust. And I think the first part of it honestly comes with trusting yourself, because if you trust yourself enough that you've hired the people to do it and that you have the means to be able to see when it's truly just not getting done, then you're going to know what to do to be able to coach and teach it. I think we also, I think this has been shared so many times, excuse me, in other settings where it's like the coaching sandwich, where you call out a positive, you talk about what potentially needs to be changed, and then you call out a positive again. Because also at the end of the day, like I've learned that sometimes like things need to be coached on right in that moment, where it's like, hey, this is something I'm noticing for everybody in this room right now. This is not just a common theme. This is something that's actually happening all the time. And this is a leadership thing for what, hey, this just needs to change, but this is then the why it needs to change. I literally just did that at a team meeting the other day where I saw an offense, quote unquote, offense from somebody. They just weren't doing the job that I had wanted them to do. And so in turn, we just made it a big group thing. Sometimes that definitely happens where you have to actually have a one-on-one conversation with that person where, hey, I'm noticing this reoccurring thing pop up because I've now delegated this thing to you. I don't want to take it back. I don't want to read because I want to trust you in it, while also that this is not actually getting done the way that you said you were going to do it, or in the time frame that you also agreed to get it done. And then especially for leaders, it's like training them at the same time, know when to coach in the moment and know when to have a separate conversation. And then when you also need to have a group conversation, because it's all a culture thing at that point. And so I think the biggest thing when you, again, whether the system or whatever's in place, it comes down to trusting yourself, trusting that the people that are in front of you. And then I also have a 2-question limit. If somebody's got questions to me, like during a day, I'm like, if I'm going to trust you, I'm going to trust for you to get the job done. And you can only come talk to me twice. And pretty much nobody comes and talks to me now because they know, like, I don't want to go ask her a question. Unless it's like my higher level leaders at that point. But I'm like, I'm like, you only have, if it's got to be a good question. If you got a question, like, I'm going to trust that you're going to come back and also with a solution. Like, I don't want just your question, like, how do I do something, but give me a solution.
Critical
for
thinking. Absolutely.
Right. Like, so if you put all of those things in place, and if you're only continuing to micromanage, then it is a huge reflection of you as the leader. That you're not then giving opportunity and letting that opportunity actually flesh and flow and actually move through. Failure literally is the greatest freaking training ground for yourself as a leader, but also for your team. If you delegate something out, your team has to learn how to do a bad job with it. And you have to trust them to do the bad job so that you can coach them to now have an opportunity to like redirect or have the opportunity to level themselves back up and really call out that potential. So it all comes back to you. And then again, like I'm definitely a person that I'm always going to be very clear about what I see they are doing right. At the same time, I really want to make sure that they know that. And then if I'm going to redirect it, I will redirect it where necessary.
So when you've had to let someone go, I literally hate doing this, but when you've had to let someone go, or when someone chose to leave, how do you navigate the emotions of that as we'll call it heart-led leader? So
there's this analogy of, Marisa alluded to it earlier, that if you were riding on a train, if let's say you're going from A to B, you're trying to get to one destination to the other, there might be multiple stops along the way, right? To where along the way, you never know who's going to come on your train and also potentially who's also going to get off your train. And then you're going to keep going, right? You're keep moving in the direction. You never know. Again, next stop, somebody's going to get on, somebody's going to get off. Multiple people get on and get off. And I think at the end of the day, we can hold on so tightly to, again, whether somebody is going to stay with you for an X, Y, Z amount of time, comparable to they just may not be there for that season. And so if you can understand that journey, that some people just are not meant to be with you forever, that they may have a season of life where they're going to get off that train and they're going to maneuver their way out. And that if you hold on so tightly to the person that individual can leave, or if they're going to leave, it's going to ruin everything and everything's going to crumble. I have to retrain everything and it's going to be so hard and all that. Like, it just is a lot of angst around somebody moving and leaving. I truly believe you are limiting yourself and the potential that God has for you and your business in that moment by keeping that person. And also, what an unfortunate instance, because you're also probably limiting the potential for that other human at the same time, because they may have something that's being called for them that's going to be even more greater because they're not in your place of business, place of leadership as well. And so it's not easy. 100% it's not easy. Like, I had a doctor come to me this past year that literally told me, I don't know if I'm in alignment with your vision or your mission. And I'm like, cool. Well, I need you to be in alignment with our vision or mission. So, and she's like, well, I feel like I'm like 60% in, 40% out. I'm like, cool. We're not moving forward at all if you're straddling a line, And so like, I was able to hear her have a conversation, was able to process and flow with that. And we had multiple conversations after that. And eventually it got to this point where I'm like, I feel like you need to follow your heart. And if you're not in alignment with us, then at the same time, you're not helping me. And at the same time, you're not helping yourself. So we need to re-navigate this and we need to help you move on. And so It's a beautiful gift to hold loosely to people and hold loosely to the result of that individual and how long they're going to end up staying with you. I know it's not easy, but the more that you can do it, it's going to be a much less stressful version for yourself and also for that other individual as well.
Yeah, that's so good. That's the stuff that no one warns you about in school.
It's
The
so true.
the leadership heartbreak, right?
Yeah.
Right. Or even
Yeah.
on the flip side of like when someone, it's not necessarily that they didn't come to you, but you've just seen things happen that are maybe like so extreme that you don't have a choice other than to let this person go. And to realize, if I try and force them into a specific box or persona, if I try and force this relationship to continue to thrive for whatever reason, right? Fear, lack, worrying about what the state of the business is, you're also preventing just, again, you're creating a lot of energy around that in your practice that's very draining and doesn't allow you to be as present with the team that you do have and the practice members that deserve your full attention.
That's good. And to piggyback off of your analogy, Dr. Sara, the train analogy, I think this is your stop because you have to go and you have a commitment at 3 p.m. So I'm going to honor that. Thank you again so much
Yes.
for joining me today.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to chat and honor to be able to share. Thank you for allowing my voice to be what it is as well. And
Absolutely.
I will.
I mean,
I was like, it's next time.
yeah, maybe next time you'll have your voice back and I won't have a cold, and then we'll
There you
sound
go.
normal and we'll have an amazing recording. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. So let's keep this going. Unfortunately, we lost Dr. Sara. We weren't fun enough for her, but we'll continue with Dr. Marisa here. And but honestly, just to kind of go back to what I was saying before, that lesson is really not taught in school. That leadership heartbreak piece, and but you both kept going, right? You built something even deeper. Let's talk about what this work looks like after the storm, right? When when the clarity comes in and the impact gets real, right? We'll start to land the plane here a little bit, but not before we ask the big questions, of course. You know me. You talk often about leading with heart. What does that actually look like on a Tuesday, on a Friday, right? On a Monday morning, right? When everything is falling apart?
Yeah. I think it's just being okay with not showing up with a mask. It doesn't mean that you have to walk into your business and carry all the with you and dump it on the people in front of you, right? And I don't have to trauma dump on my team just so that they feel they can be connected to me and just so that I feel like I'm a raw, authentic leader. But it is about taking the opportunity to take a moment if I need it, address what I need to address, or put a little, post-it note in my brain and in my heart that I need to go back to that later, and then recognize that there are other people that I am showing up for. And so I can let them in and say, hey, today is a little bit of a day. I'm going to need some support in these areas, or this is where I'm not at 100% or even at 90%. So I just want you to know that, be aware of it, because I'm going to kind of try my best to show up 100% present, but this is something that's going on with me, just so that we're aware. So it's almost like bringing awareness, because if I walk in with all this stuff going on, my energy is going to be different. And they work with me every single day. And so you do get to know your people if you're present enough to be present with them. So having me show up with no explanation and just having a storm or feeling whatever I'm feeling that day that isn't the bright light that I may typically show up as, they're going to see that, they're going to feel that. Then what you're doing is you're actually creating opportunity for people to make assumptions about what's going on. And maybe they're making assumptions about like that they did something wrong, or that the paperwork wasn't right, or you're mad about something in the business, or not enough people showed up, or something else. And I've been in practices where there's been that rhythm. There was a lack of not transparency, but just a lack of capacity to share in a way that was so productive to being able to do what we needed to do at our business.
Sure.
And it let a lot of room for gossip. And it let a lot of room for speculation. And what that did was it actually killed the team culture faster
Sure.
than if those leaders had just decided to share, like, hey, this is just the rhythm of what's going on. This is what's up.
Yeah.
And so I actually ask for that from my team too. I don't need you to be 100% on 100% of the day, 365 days of the year. What I do need for you is to show up regardless. If you really need the day in the moment, have a conversation with me. If we can manage it, I will do my best to honor whatever is going on in your life right now, and we'll take care of it. But you can also show up and just say, today, I'm not at my best. Maybe we can navigate, and you're not the one that's patient facing that day because they deserve your best. Maybe you're the one that's doing back office, paperwork or tasks and handling, emails and things for us, right? So there are ways that you can continue to navigate that situation, even when the storm is hitting, and still be present.
Sure. Yeah. It's not easy to do,
No.
obviously. And if someone thinks that they can wake up one morning and just decide to do it, I've got something coming for you here, like a little truth bomb. It ain't gonna happen, brother. Because it's kind of like the logic side of our brain. We have to train ourselves to be logical sometimes. This is the same thing. But yeah, I love your answer. But let me shift to a different type of question.
Sure.
But I would still consider it in the same arena. And it's more around legacy, right? We do our best. We try to thrive. We try to make good decisions. But when it comes to our legacy, we want to leave something behind that's meaningful, right? What kind of legacy do you hope to leave, Dr. Marisa? And I know you mentioned the last time that you guys were probably starting to talk about maybe growing the family and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So not just for your team or your patients, but for your future kids, right? For yourself. What kind of legacy do you hope to leave?
I think that's why I do this work in the first place, because we are all going to have stuff.
Sure.
We're all going to have traumas. We're all going to be hurt by our parents or the people that are closest to us. We're all going to have childhood memories. Like, we're all going to have lessons that we learn as we grow and we develop. That doesn't mean that I have to intentionally put that forward in the next generation that comes after me, because I didn't take enough time to do the work to deal with my own, so that the shit that they experience is just the natural rhythm of what life will continue to unfold and bring their way. Because I truly believe that we all do the best that we can with the information that we have and the understanding that we're exploring. But if you're not interested in exploring, there's never the opportunity for you to perhaps engage an aspect of yourself that needs engaging, or that needs flourishing, or that perhaps need moving on from. And so when I think about the legacy I want to leave, like, there's a lot of things that I want to be able to provide for a family, to provide for people in a sense of a material or monetary way, and financially set them up for their future in the way that my parents did for us and sacrificed my grandparents coming from Italy to set up shop here in America and do a pasta making business and just grow that. Like, there's just so much appreciation for where I've come from, what I've lived, the culture that I grew up in. And I want to pass a lot of those traditions on. I also want to pass on the idea that doing heart work and being emotionally vulnerable and working on parts of yourself is not a weakness, but it's a strength. And it's an ability for you to show up differently and to break patterns of generational trauma and to understand even what that is, and to be able to handle conflict just as beautifully as you will handle the celebratory times. And that growing through that is actually a gift. It's a skill. It's a muscle that needs to be worked. And it is a very, very rewarding one because you literally get to see and watch your life and your relationships transform. And if I can show up as a better human for littles that I want to have one day, and also just in general for the relationships that I encounter, that is meaningful to me. And I want to build that legacy as much as I want to build a opportunity based legacy on the side of having a business and having a story and having a capacity to provide my family and children with a life that they're comfortable with.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Legacy is such a powerful word to me. Growing up, I'm from the Middle East, and in the Arab culture, I mean, legacy is huge.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of cultures, I feel like we lost a little bit of it here in the States, but within other cultures, it just seems to be so strong. And I think we need to teach that to our kids because it matters, because there's an impact that you're making on future generations.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times, and I think where my culture gets it wrong is it's not about what you're leaving your kids when it comes to their inheritance. That's
Mm.
not what it is. It's not about the fact like, oh, I bought a house and I have these rentals and this is how much money I'm leaving my kids. No, it has nothing to do with that, but it has everything to do with the values that you leave behind. Um, so I think you and I are of the same mindset when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
And I
And
think,
just being present for them,
mhm,
right? Like, I don't want to be a slave to the work that I do every day in for the sake or for the name of like leaving a legacy of this business and work and financial capacity behind. I
mhm,
want to be an emotionally present parent and
mhm,
be able to help pour into my kids. Like, I mean, I have some friends that they work very, very hard to provide the life that they do for their kids, and that's a
sure,
wonderful gift and a wonderful blessing. Equally, I have parents that have nothing, and those kids are so happy and
yeah,
thrive because they
yeah,
are just loved. And that's the thing that I think each one of us human beings craves and deserves and is inherently like, you know, deserving of is just love and being seen and appreciated for the person you are. Um, and so doing the heart work just allows you to, again, show up as a more
yeah,
present human to that relationship that you, I believe, are actually interested in cultivating positively.
yeah. I'm gonna throw kind of a final challenge question at you, and then I have something fun. We're gonna do a little lightning round after that, but
Oh, cool.
but before we get there, if someone listening is in a season of doubt, or maybe they feel disconnected from everything around them, um, what's one piece of advice you'd give them right now?
Well, if they're in doubt, then so two parts, because doubt and feeling disconnected can come from two different places, right? Because if someone is in doubt, I'm going to invite them to get still and try and be more present in their day to day and focus on what's right in front of them, because oftentimes we're going to be shown the answer to our doubtful questions and our doubtful thoughts. But instead, if we're so focused on that doubt, on that lack, on that desire, it's not allowing that light to really come through. And I know in my own seasons where I have doubted where I was going, or I have wondered if I made a correct decision, or if I should have done something different, or if I really am on the path that I'm meant to be, that always took me out of the life that I was living
Mm,
versus being present in the moment, which gave me so much more answers and clarity on feeling if I was really in alignment with it and watching life unfold and the blessings that were coming along with it. If
yeah,
we're feeling disconnected, it's a similar answer in the sense of getting still and just coming back to the self. If you're feeling disconnected in things, one, take a moment, take a day, take a weekend, and get back to the self. Don't plan anything, don't structure your day. Allow your day to unfold with just the pure joy and bliss of the things that you want to do in that moment. And if that's sitting on the couch and watching a Netflix show, evaluate why that Netflix show makes you feel safe and happy at that time, because that'll probably put you in the direction of something that you're craving. If it's something like going out and connecting back with nature and just breathing in fresh oxygen, go there. Evaluate what you're feeling. What are you experiencing? What senses are like wakening up within you? And continue to go for those feelings. If that's something that's important, then find half an hour in your week or in your month to set aside that time. Have that be something that you look forward to. Because most often when we're disconnected with so many other things, it's because we're just not connected to ourselves and where our heart feels at home and things that really spark joy in our day-to-day.
Yeah. And there it is. I mean, the kind of answer that goes deeper than your business plan, right?
Yeah.
Thank you really for sharing your heart so honestly. All right, let's lighten it up.
Okay.
And we're going to finish strong with a few quick fire favorites. Little bit of a lightning round here. Okay. A few fun ones, right? We're lightening it up a little bit here. And don't overthink. Do not overthink. Just answer. Okay? Because there's no wrong answers. Here we go. A book that shook your soul or changed your leadership.
Daring Greatly, Brene Brown. Or Into the Wilderness by Brene. Both.
One value you refuse to compromise on.
Honor people, not what they bring to the table. Just the fact that they are human. Honor the person in front of you.
How can listeners follow your work, your practice?
They can find us on Instagram at the Heartwork Podcast. Also, we are on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. You can find us there. Both Dr. Sara and my personal handles are linked in at the Heartwork Podcast. You can DM us, send us an email at theheartworklife@gmail.com. And if you go to our personal pages, you'll also get linked to our business pages, Freedom Chiropractic for Dr. Sara in Knoxville, Tennessee, and Homestead Chiropractic in Bettendorf, Iowa for myself.
Love it. And again, Dr. Marisa, thank you so much for making the time to come on our podcast. It's been amazing.
It's always a pleasure chatting with you, Amin. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Whew. Okay. If your heart feels a little fuller, your shoulders a little lighter, mine's kind of hurting though. I gotta go see Dr. Juan. Or your to-do list a little less scary after hearing this. Same. A huge thanks to Dr. Marisa and Dr. Sara for showing us that leadership doesn't have to be lonely. It just has to be honest. If you love this episode, go check out the Heartwork Podcast. They've got way more where this came from. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and tell a fellow overfunctioning high achiever that they're allowed to breathe. I'm Amin Saeed, and this is Beyond Adjustments, where real growth happens between the cracks, the laughs, and the Me Too moments. We'll see you next time.
Bye.